it's enormous to go through something like that. It's one of the most awful days of my entire life, for sure. I started writing a blog called Not the Blueprint, and that was all about just not fitting in, because I didn't fit in now. Because it wasn't like I was desperate for children and I couldn't have them, which was definitely one camp. It wasn't like I was desperate for children and I'd had them, that was another camp. Or I never wanted them, never even tried. I didn't fit in that camp either. I just seemed to sort of fall between the cracks of never really wanted it, did it to try and save a marriage, didn't work out, and lost everything. And Not the Blueprint really changed everything for me. It was a massive part of my journey to being true to myself. It was just the strangest time to go through, but I felt so passionate that I had to talk about it and be open and be vulnerable and be authentic. Definitely some dark days in that time where
of course.
I just did not know what life was going to look like now, like who was I without him and without our relationship. And I just really believe that we're here for a good time, not a long time. And so you have to do whatever you've got to do to try and make the time that you do have as precious as possible. Like,
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. Through sharing the stories of our guests, I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey.
100%. I really, my only regret is that I didn't stick to it. So remember when I met my husband, I said to him, I don't want children. If you want children, I'm probably not the right person for you. And he was like, no, I'd rather have you than have kids. And then we just both got swept up in the sort of societal norms. I remember my cousin in Australia, she's a bit older, and before we got married, she was like, what are you, the housekeeper? When are you getting married? And so we got married, and then as soon as we got married, she's like, when are you having a baby? And it was like, oh my God. And then and for friends that have had one, then people are like, when are you having another one? It's like there's one script. And so, you know, I can't have an experience without trying to make it positive. That's just not how my brain works. And so I started writing a blog called Not the Blueprint. And that was all about just not fitting in, because I didn't fit in now. Because it wasn't like I was desperate for children and I couldn't have them, which was definitely one camp. It wasn't like I was desperate for children and I'd had them, that was another camp. Or I never wanted them, never even tried. I didn't fit in that camp either. I just seemed to sort of fall between the cracks of never really wanted it, did it to try and save a marriage, didn't work out, and lost everything. What camp is that? That's like Camp Clay, and I'm on my own. But again, sort of similar to how I felt when I started Connected Brighton, I just thought, I can't be the only person that this has happened to, because the law of averages, it's highly unlikely that I'm the only one. And I remember writing my blog for the first time on Instagram, and I just kind of woke up, like the name came to me, Not the Blueprint. I found that handle was free, and I just wrote this post about feeling like my hand had just broke through the rubble, like I'd survived this, and I can tell my story and I can share what's happened. And it's hard, and all of this is hard, but if you resonate with this and you need to hear it, then I'm here to tell it. And Not the Blueprint really changed everything for me. It was a massive part of my journey to being true to myself, because I kind of openly grieved on there. Because when you do IVF, as you well know, we got offered one counselling session after going through all of that trauma. You know, we were only 7 weeks pregnant when we found out we'd lost whatever was there, but it had taken us 2 years to get 7 weeks pregnant, and some people were really dismissive. So when I've told people, sometimes I'm like, oh, you're only 7 weeks, oh, like they were going to feel sorry for me, and now they don't. And it's like, it's enormous to go through something like that. It's one of the most awful days of my entire life, for sure. But suddenly found all of these people on Instagram that were writing about fertility and infertility and miscarriage and divorce, and I didn't realise these existed. So I felt really passionate that I needed to add my voice and my story into that mix, because it was so different to the others of, you know, those that were kind of living on their heads and having wheatgrass shots every 10 minutes to try and get pregnant, or they just remortgaged their house again, or there wasn't anybody quite like me. And I had a really good following on there, and really interesting reaction from like men and women who did or didn't want children and were with partners who felt opposite, or single people who just really wanted kids and wouldn't even know if they could have them or not, because they're not even getting the chance. And this whole fertility and infertility world opened up to me that I had no clue was so big. But again, in that terms of not fitting in, I remember going to a bloggers event for the fertility bloggers, of which I was one, and all of those women in there either wanted to get pregnant or had got pregnant through IVF. And it was very interesting to see the dynamics between those that had been successful and those that hadn't been successful. And they were all looking at me like with pure fear, because I represented everything that they did not want to be, which was really happy without children and single.
Wow.
Whereas they wanted to be married and with kids. And that's all that they could ever focus on. And there was me as this kind of shiny unicorn, like, it's okay, everybody. If it doesn't work out, life can still be really cool. And so I just felt, and I went through this journey. I went travelling. After my divorce, I went away for 6 months, and I always joke about how it's like the Julia Roberts film Eat, Love, Pray. But mine was Snack, Nap, Hope. And I spent time in America and Australia and Canada, and I just really found myself so I could be truer to myself. And I wrote Not the Blueprint in that time, and I had very, very personal posts when it was really hard, or when I was having real epiphanies about what a great opportunity this was, or whatever I was feeling, I was sharing it. And it was so cathartic for me. It was just sort of my form of therapy to just be able to get it out. Like, I'd lost my best friend, I'd lost the chance of ever having a family, even though it wasn't something that I'd wanted. It was now definitely never going to happen. And I felt like someone had just wiped 10 years off my life, because I can't remember all the stories and things that we did, and we have no contact. And so I'd lost my future as well as today, and I can't remember the past. So it was just the strangest time to go through, but I felt so passionate that I had to talk about it and be open and be vulnerable and be authentic, and I had a really, really great response to that. I did get a bit it felt quite hard at one point to sort of be the poster girl for infertility, miscarriage and divorce. Because you're taking on a lot of energy for people and emotions, and to keep it being positive, and there is another way out there, and not everything has to be around children, and there's all sorts of ways that you can have children in your life if that's what you want, but if you don't want them, that's okay too. It doesn't make you a bad person or less paternal or maternal to not want children. It's just not for everybody.
And I think that's it, that people just actually accepting that, just saying that narrative out there isn't for me, and I'm okay with that. And I think it's probably, listening to you talk, it's probably more about other people being uncomfortable with the conversation, because this is what life should be. This is what everyone should be doing there. And you're going, well, actually, no, I've not done that. I've done X. And like you said, being really happy about it. I think, because obviously I've known you for a while now, and just listening to you talk now, you're optimistic, you're a positive person, that positive energy that I get from you, that to come out of that situation and have that optimistic, positive outlook on life is a great way to be, and not, whereas other people maybe not, they get swallowed up in that sort of scenario. And
it would have been very easy to. So there was definitely some dark days in that time where
of course.
I just did not know what life was going to look like now, like who was I without him and without our relationship, and moving houses, and changing jobs, and constantly trying to find the thing that was going to make me feel like I was myself again. And that was really tough, really, really tough. And I didn't have any map to follow. I was just, it's like some kind of was a crane fly, like a human crane fly. I was just bouncing off everything, like, something will stick. I'll work it out. It will kind of all come together. But just, keeping, trying to keep healthy and exercise and talk about it. From growing up in that foster environment, one thing was you had to always talk about your feelings. So, we'd have social workers, and my parents divorced when I was 10, and we did a lot of family therapy then as well. So I'm so used to having to talk about my emotions that I have to talk it out, which is another reason why Not the Blueprint felt comfortable to me. There's lots of people who've said to me, I can't believe that you've been so open and you've been so vulnerable, but that's the only way I know how to be. And I think we've lost that ability of storytelling if we don't do that, because you're not teaching other people that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be different if you don't talk about it.
I love that, and I think you're so right. Like, there's such a powerful message within storytelling that we can do, and especially when it comes to vulnerability. And I think I've certainly seen a little bit of a shift. I don't know if you tell me, but throughout lockdown, people were forced to be a little bit more vulnerable and forced to be a little bit more open about situations, because especially related to business, for example, we couldn't go online and go, my business is doing great, because at most businesses were doing a bit shit, and And do you think you've seen a little bit of a change in people being a bit more open, whether that be online or in person at events and stuff? Or
I definitely feel because of, not the bereavement being a massive part of why Connected Brighton came along, and that sort of disconnect to my friends and needing a tribe that understood me. I think I didn't originally see that there was going to be a link between the two brands, and my original intention was that it would have nothing to do with that story. And then I realised if people were going to come out with me, they really needed to know who I was and why was I doing this in the first place. And now I have a lot of people, men and women, that come who've ended up in the same position as me, and they'll share their stories with me. So I definitely think if you're open, people will be open back. And I agree. I think what the pandemic did in enabling people to be more authentic and vulnerable was we were all in the same, that we're in the same storm but different boats. And so you felt more comfortable to talk about what condition your boat was in because you knew that you understood the storm. And so it gave us this platform that we could all understand, and nobody was thriving at that point. So like you said, if you'd have been like, I'm having a lovely time, people would have been like, well, you're a bit strange. I did actually love lockdown. Obviously it had its moments, and I had just had a breakup and I had to do a lot of healing during that time, and so that was definitely tough, but I'm grateful I had the time and space to do it. But I called it my Lyndsey loving because I was just working. I didn't have my business at that point. Connected Brighton was just a twinkle in my eye at that stage. So I had my big corporate job, so I just exercised. I had no interest in doing like house party or pub quizzes or anything. My inner hermit totally took root, and we had a lovely time.
Amazing.
Just having no FOMO or no FOBO. It was great. But having much better conversations with everybody because we were all being a bit more honest about it, because we were all feeling a little bit uncertain and a bit bruised and a bit not sure what was going to happen next, but just trying to make the best of. Luckily I was around people that were making the best of it, as opposed to people that went down the other side. And it's like you asked me that question earlier about being positive, but because for me the alternative is just never an option. And I've always been lucky enough that there's definitely been points where I've felt myself on the brink of a depression. And I remember sort of in those dark days after the divorce, we did a course at the pensions regulator, and it was about stress and anxiety and like spotting it in your colleagues, and they put up a PowerPoint of all the things that you should look out for, and I was like tick 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 tick. Okay, that's not very good. And then a woman who was in the group, one of my friends, took me for a drink afterwards, and she was like, I think you might be depressed. And I was like, I think you're right. But it took someone to just say it to me, that I just felt like her saying that just made me really like pull myself out and be like, right, I need to pull in all the tools and resources around me that are going to get me in a better place.
Because I'm interested with that side, because as similar to you, I guess, as ultimately people would, I guess, describe me as a positive person and an optimist, similar to you, do that. But do you feel that, I don't know how to describe it, do you feel at that time like you felt like with the depression side of stuff that I can't allow myself to be that person, I'm not down or feeling low or for whatever, and you had obviously every reason to feel like that because of the situation you've been in, but not allowing yourself, this is the person I am, so I can't allow myself to be that person. Did you feel that?
Yeah, definitely, because that's not who I am. But you tend to find that a lot of people that do have mental health is that the frustration is that they know that's not who they are. That you wake up in the morning and you're like, this isn't who I want to be, this isn't how I want to feel, but it's completely out of your control. And I've never been in that far down that road. I've always been able to reach out, do something about it, ask for help. And it's a cycle. I think it's unrealistic to expect to just be kind of at one level the whole time. Life is ups and downs, and there are times when I can talk about my journey like now and I can be fine, and there's other times where I'll just burst into tears over it. There's a lot to keep processing, and it's a big thing that happened. But I now know the tools that help me, the people that help me, the things that will bring me joy and bring me happiness. And I just really believe that we're here for a good time, not a long time. And so you have to do whatever you've got to do to try and make the time that you do have as precious as possible. Like, my dad had a heart attack when I was 21, and I feel like I've had a must make the most of life complex ever since then, because he had so much he wanted to do and to live for, and he'd only just retired, at 15, so he'd only had like 2 years of living kind of work free, although he was working because he's we're clays, we can't help ourselves.
Yeah.
But I just felt you never know, like you never know. And so I've always managed to try and make the most out of every situation. And even like when he passed away, I was trying to find the positives of like we didn't know he was sick, he didn't know he was sick, you know. He went quickly, it wasn't painful, and you know, just something positive. Like there has to be something positive.